we are here tonight to finish talking about our fantastically small yet mighty book, How Successful People Think. So if you're joining us tonight, you know it's a panel conversation. We're in the final 3 chapters of the book. We're going to share our thoughts. But before we get into it, let's have everyone introduce themselves. Sophia, take it away.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I am a senior studying at Fordham University in New York. I am a communications and social media intern, and I am excited to be here today to finish off this book.
Cool. I'm Harold Strong. I'm in North Texas and president of Medical Innovation Collaborative. Happy to be here tonight.
I'm Mike Minoski. I'm the director of coaching for Hire Club, a 38,000 member community focused on career development and job search. Also co-lead programs at Wharton on job search career development. And I'm a certified coach with about 10 years as an executive coach.
And I'm Jackie Newman, coming at you from San Francisco, California. I'm the co-founder of Edwell. We're a social emotional coaching platform for educators by educators. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to get together and chat. So to kind of give everybody an overview of what we're going to do tonight, instead of, kind of the tee-up conversation we've had in the past, myself and Sophia are really going to take this opportunity to ask Harold, Jackie, and Mike questions around coaching, around services. Harold, you're deeply involved with the data analytics company Query, and how all of these tools can help people frame their thoughts and their construct around their career, around their job search, around their professional development. I read something, or I might have heard it, that was saying that even the greatest athletes have coaches, right? That we all need development tools. So with that, let's take it away as far as shared thinking. So when I think of obviously shared thinking, it's more of like a brain trust concept, if it were. And, Mike, when you think about shared thinking, especially leading a team of coaches that coach people, how powerful is that? How powerful is kind of that deep thought network?
I think it's everything. I think that it's where not only does an idea become real, but I think an idea literally just grows quickly, deeply. When you can get a shared group of people, coaches, any group of people that can bounce around ideas and take them from, I've got this small idea, into this mushroom cloud, if you will, of this can really go places, this can really make a great impact. That to me is the huge aspiration of shared thinking.
And so to kind of tap into, because I might have just jumped in since we've all read it. So Jackie, to kind of fill you in as far as like, what is shared thinking? Great question. So when we're thinking about shared thinking, it's that the value of thoughts and ideas of others are compounded. So shared thinking is essentially compound interest of the thought.
Oh, I love it. So just this morning, I was teaching a design thinking workshop for the State Department. They have a tech camp program, and I was doing it with 45 female entrepreneurs from Greece. So shout out. And I was nervous at first by the term shared thinking, which sounds a little bit like groupthink. So that's why I wanted you to define it for the audience. Because collaborative thinking, I'm all about. And that's why you should have as many diverse coaches in your life as possible. So that you don't get trapped in your own recurring, repetitive narrative, which is often a product of limiting beliefs and other forms of self-sabotage.
Can I double click on that, Jackie? Because I think that's a really interesting point, and that there's a difference between shared thinking that's productive, that's collaborative, and then kind of the group think that can be dangerous, right? How do you know the difference between the two?
I'll jump in, and then I want to hear from Harold. But I think you have to find people who disagree with you and think differently from you. And demographics in a whole number of ways: age, race, orientation, part of the world, and so even background, culture, education, schooling. Groupthink is when everyone buys into the same thing and agrees. And it's really hard because when you're trying to spread a culture of an org, you want everyone to buy in, but you also need to create a safe space in your coaching relationships to be able to challenge someone's line of thinking.
I completely agree with that. I think that makes sense. Diversity of thought is the key piece, right? Because if everybody's spreading peanut butter, it just really makes it hard to chew. So there you go. So the challenge here is while you have diversity, everyone needs to be pointing toward one specific milestone. We understand what success looks like. So while you can create all kinds of thought, it needs to be thought with a purpose in a direction. So if you're just doing group thought, you're just meandering. It's Brownian movement. You're bumping into walls. You're not getting a lot done. It could be fun. You could have even beer, but you're not creating any kind of value, and you're not pursuing any particular direction.
If I can jump in too, and I think what both Jackie and Harold were really getting at is we tend to be afraid of debate, and debate when done with people that have respect around each other is a catalyst. It is not an impediment. I think it's a catalyst, not an impediment.
That's exactly right, because you have to have a little friction to demonstrate some progress. And if you're nervous or a little shy about, bumping into someone's thought, you're not going to get the honest feedback that you need, or the group to feed on to move to that next level or beyond that next level. So Mike, that's right on point.
Sophia, any thoughts as far as, shared thinking, the value and ideas of others, anything from your experience, your travels, anything that you would like to tie in?
I'd like to pose a side question on top of this, just about, we're talking about like group work and different kinds of things, but let's say as a new employee, you're into a team majority of the time, your first year, your second year. And so what advice would the four of you give to a new employee in that group scenario, how to tackle new experiences and new projects? What advice would you give on that?
I'll go. It's interesting you bring that up, because that is something that comes up a lot in my executive coaching, which surprises people. That the idea of how do I engage, and you're a lot of times what my clients have come to is the idea of, instead of walking in saying, well, let me make my statements, what they're coming in with is a bunch of really good questions. And the questions aren't gotcha questions. They're elaboration questions. They're questions of learning. And what's a lot of my leaders have found, a lot of my executive clients and all clients have found, when they do that someone will invariably walk up to them later and said, I had the same question and I was afraid to ask it. And, questions can be so powerful. And the idea of walking in that way, I think is just such a great recipe to start.
I'll also add, Sophia, I was in one of my coachees yesterday was saying they were afraid to speak up in a staff meeting. And so first, a coach also has to ask questions, inquiry-based learning, like what's underneath that? What are you afraid of? Let's unpack that. Second, let's visualize. Let's say you did speak up. What do you see happening? And then also let's assess, what are the costs of you not bringing that up and sharing your idea? And ultimately, hopefully get to the idea that the cost is higher for you not contributing in a group than the perceived risks.
Preparation is everything. And in preparing for the meeting, you have an idea of the general direction and focus that will be presented. But what is your role in that presentation? What is your responsibility toward this particular goal? So as you go and prepare, if that's not addressed, or if you need clarity, you've engaged, you ask the question, and then you move forward from there. It's a lot of people confuse engagement and participation with enthusiasm. I don't need a cheerleader. I need someone who's plugged in mentally and on board with the direction of the organization.
And if I could, Harold, you said something really important there. A lot of times as a recruiter and a coach, I have hired people that had failure.
Right.
The reason I hired them and our teams hired them is because we believe they could help us from not doing the same thing.
Right.
And so, Jackie, you were commenting about how, what are the stakes if you don't speak out? I think that's one of the huge stakes is every person has a unique view. You
Right.
might see something here that no one else in the room sees. I'm sure you've run into that a lot, Jackie, when you go there.
I mean, it goes back to our first topic, right? Which is the power of shared thinking. If you don't add your diversity and your voice to the mix, the sum of the parts will not be greater than just individual voices. So you have to add. But Sophia, I want to ask the question back to you. What makes you ask that? What are you nervous about? And not you in particular, but why do you ask?
Well, I think from experiences that I've had just in group work settings as a college student, and you all probably know these types of situations, it can be difficult for one person to, okay, there's going to be a leader. Does the leader, choose who does what task, whatever the assignment is? So I think that my thinking around it was, okay, I can apply this to my life now as a college student, but in a professional setting and in that professional development that I'm going to be going through, what are the advice from other people who have gone through these experiences? How can I learn from that? And I think the three of you, or four of you, have this great experience that I can learn from. And so I think that's important for not only myself, but for other people who are watching this to know, learn, and understand through that professional development.
I just empathize and cringe a little bit about group work in a school setting. Even when I was doing my MBA, I remember there'd be a group assignment and we'd have to do a business model. And they would look to the male and be like, okay, great, Ian, you do the business model, and Jackie, you can do the marketing. And I was like, whoa. What are the assumptions baked into these role assignments? So I feel you on the awkwardness of group work.
I love it. Here's what I love the most about the conversation that the four of you just had. The fact that you basically summed up verbatim this chapter, how to encourage the participation of shared thinking. Value the idea of others. Okay, we got that. And ask yourself, do I place value on people? Do I value the interactive process? Harold, this sounds a lot like what you were saying. Jackie, Mike, move from competition to cooperation. Have an agenda when you meet, Harold. Preparation.
There you go. Meet for purpose.
Get the right people around the table. Compensate good thinkers and collaborators well. It ties into what I do. You guys are like a micro team Bandolero of best-selling book ads. So I think it's easy to get trapped in the space, though, of being a leader. You're leading a project, you're leading a team, you're leading an organization, and you really become focused on the drumbeat of right? My ideas. You can kind of not intentionally, but unintentionally enter into selfish thinking, which is why unselfish thinking is so powerful. And Harold, you've led so many teams. You currently, coach businesses on a global scale. How is it that you have continued to practice unselfish thinking? And when you've seen potentially yourself heading in a selfish direction, how have you pulled it back?
Good questions. Selfish thinking usually winds up in the opposite direction of the last topic that we had. It's usually short of the mark, limited ideas that inspire and enhance any type of activity. And you wind up alone on a project effectively. So you're trying to garner support, you're trying to get funding, you're trying to get resources of some sort. And if it's my idea, who are you and what experience what does this department think about that? Or have you talked to customers? Well, they don't understand the way I understand it. This product, I'm sorry, conversation's over. So the opportunity to engage and to learn more, it's even if you, West Coast lean startup, right? You're trying to discover what the customer wants. You're going out to talk to 100 people to get feedback on an idea. Similarly, internally, if I'm working with a company or even with a small group or an entrepreneur, the idea is to learn what others think, to get their engagement, to document that, and to somehow validate that, incorporate it in your product, and move forward. Again, I don't fall into that too often because you want to be relevant. The times I do fall into it, it may be because I'm holding on a little too tight. You know, no one hears it the way I hear it. You just don't understand me. Let me just say it louder. And I don't know if that's exactly the case. So
I have to respond to this. Okay. First of all, in teaching design, I think what you're saying is like, you have to practice emotional detachment, because if you're not attached to your prototype, you're not going to be able to take any kind of feedback. And then Cynthia, to come back to you, one thing I didn't hear in that chat, the end of the chapter, how you create a shared thinking environment, is like listening to others. Like a lot of people are just waiting for their mic, right? When will the mic come to me? And IDEO, one of the most prominent design agencies in the world, they have rules of a brainstorm in their rooms for brainstorming. And one of the rules is build off the ideas of others. And if you're not listening, if you're only thinking about what you're going to say next and your selfish thinking, you're not going to be able to build off the ideas of others.
Right. Thank you.
I love this.
That was good.
Oh, you guys are the best. We just had a comment come through. Mahi says, how do you guys view
Co-opetition?
And any tips, tricks to discover alignment among teammates? Jackie, Mike, Harold, please educate me on co-opetition.
So co-opetition, as I understand it, is the person you are running, you're doing a run with, the people that, in my case, I'm a distance swimmer, you swim next to. It's you want them to do well, but the fact that they do well influences you to do better. So it's when you see these great, pictures of people running side by side and they're smiling, their times are better because they have that other person there pushing them in a healthy way.
Right.
That's my understanding of co-opetition. And so you are part of a team. Everybody wants to get better, and you get better because the other people get better. It becomes that trampoline effect.
Right. You're working in a group, and the five of us are in a group. We understand the goal, the objective, the milestone. Okay, so go out, think of an idea, bring it back to the group, and the competition is who comes up with the best idea. But the cooperation component of it is, once we've determined who's the best idea, let's all get around that and move it forward. So it's kind of a divide and conquer kind of approach, which sometimes is fun.
Can I double click on, and I'd love to hear from each of you on how to balance this, because Jackie, you make such a valid point. So many of us are just listening, waiting for our opportunity to respond. We're not actually listening. And I wonder also how much of that has been exacerbated in this Zoom culture, because I can't read your body language when we talk. There's potentially a delay due to technology. There's all these things that are happening. Our brains are trying. I read an article the other day that said when you're doing even a live podcast like this, your brain is trying to center the faces that you're seeing, right? So your mind's already busy, even if you don't realize it. How do we just continue to practice? It really feels to me like mindfulness, like unselfish thinking is mindfulness. And we've been practicing mindfulness not in this environment before. How do we pull that off when you guys think about it?
Get sleep. No, I'm just kidding. Mindfulness. I mean, it really is a muscle to be able to return your distracted thoughts to the present. And so I do think it's something that you have to practice. And meditation is one form of mindfulness, but there are lots of ways you can practice that returning of attention back to the present. You can practice it with your partner when you get home at night, where you say, "How was your day?" And then you stop listening because you're eating something up in the microwave.
And I think there's a thing about sequencing too, Jackie, to kind of play off what you're saying, is that a lot of studies say we are already formulating the answer to what we heard before we're done listening. And the idea of, okay, can I literally just for this minute, as Jackie is talking, as Harold is talking, to dismiss the creation of the answer.
Mm. Mm.
And I've heard some people say, I've know a couple leaders that's a very small sort of micro mindfulness moment of stop formulating the answer. And that way you're listening more.
The discipline of listening.
Well
You
said.
know, before COVID, we would walk down hallways, past the water cooler to get, snackages, those kinds of things. And the communication that we had with our coworkers, if that's our environment, was very helpful. And it was on a lot of different levels, and a lot of it wasn't formal. Now, if it's Zoom, we have to schedule time, and I have to make sure that my dog that's sleeping back here has already been out and won't disturb the conversation, and the door is closed and all these. So it's a little bit more baggage attached to it to respond to this kind of stuff. But the question is well placed, and I appreciate the two answers because I'm still kind of wrestling with it.
I just want to add, coaching has helped me practice this because I'm someone that loves to connect, relate it to my life, empathize, problem solve. And as a coach, you're not a mentor, you're not an advisor. Your client is not this empty glass that you are pouring the answers into. I have to bite my tongue and say, oh yeah, that happened to me. I'm also burnt out. Instead, just ask questions and be present with them, where it's not about you, it's about them. So coaching has helped me work on this muscle.
And you know what, to go right with that too, Jackie, one of the things I realized is coaching taught me to talk slower. And by talking slower, it forced me to engage more in the listening, because I was talking quickly because I was so excited about what they're saying. Exactly what you're saying. Oh, wow. Hey, I know this and I can that. Well, you know what? They don't need to hear it that way. They need to discover it themselves. And I've noticed that my speech pattern is slower. That's my mindfulness way of doing it.
I got to learn.
So happy I'm here tonight. I'm getting smarter.
I'm smarter when I log in every time with you guys. That's great.
Yeah.
I think I'm the one who's really gaining here, all of this knowledge. I just want to connect on this. We're talking about coaching, and the four of you have so much knowledge around that topic. And as we head into the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, I'm not really sure if this is like the exact time that people are applying to jobs and entering into that workforce anyways, but what should job seekers be keeping in mind during this holiday season? What would you recommend to, push through? There's a lot of family events going on, and job seeking can maybe hit a back burner. What would you say to those individuals in this current climate?
Can I lead off with that? Because that's being a coach and a recruiter. This is the busiest time of year. Mm-hmm. People are very surprised to hear that, but and I'll give you a data. In the last 6 weeks, 11 of my clients have had job offers and signed offer letters. It's been great. And it will continue like that until, next week will be quiet because of Thanksgiving. And then the week of Christmas, it will be quiet a little bit afterwards. But between now and then is always the busiest time, because companies are trying to bring the people in and have them show up in January when they can, as a group, start going through the training and development that they want these people to do. They've got new products coming out. So there's a lot of hiring that takes place this time of year. The actual quiet time of year is August. Everybody's on vacation. The challenge we're running into, and I don't want to hog the floor here, but the challenge we're running into is companies' decision-making, where it only took 3 or 4 people to make a decision about hiring, now takes 5 or 6 because of the fear of hiring somebody whose hands you've never shaken. So the actual process of going through an interview cycle is now much longer. So it is busier, the cycle takes longer, and that's why and particularly this year being so historic and so different, I won't be surprised if the week of Christmas people are doing interviews.
Wow.
Now, Jackie, go ahead. Please go ahead.
A totally different line of thinking, which is, if you asked about the holidays, and one thing is you have diverse people in your family, probably, maybe totally different industries, levels of experience. And if there are people you're comfortable in your family or your friend group that you would see, being vulnerable and asking for help and saying, I have an interview with blank. Can I do a practice session with you? I just today did something really scary, which is I've been drafting like an investor deck. And to my high school group of friends, there's a diverse like range of industries. And I just like sent them my investor deck for feedback. And like, we're a friend group. We don't talk about work. We hang out. And it is scary to sometimes like talk about career, but actually people really want to help. And so when you are, home for the holidays, don't separate work and family. Like maybe someone in your family would be a great mock interviewer for you or a resume reviewer.
Great idea.
I guess from my perspective, I would apply from the technical side of, from a query perspective, keywords that would be informational, supportive, helpful in understanding the job you want so that you can position yourself effectively, but include those words in your resume so that, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed picks it up and gets you through that first screening. The opportunity there is you can always put it in the margins for the most part, but that's not going to sell the recruiter at that next level. Instead, what you want to do is somehow incorporate that in the narrative, the description, or in the past experiences that you've had so that it's kind of melded in. It's baked into the document so that it makes more sense. So I appreciate everything that you guys said, but from a technical perspective, if this is an opportunity that you're really looking at, hit it 100%, put the keywords in it, practice, and let's hope for the best.
And make sure the keywords, Harold, great stuff, and make sure that the keywords actually start in LinkedIn.
Yes.
Because recruiters, myself, my teams that work for me, that's where we started. The resume is a marketing document.
Yep.
And so you essentially have your own free landing page on LinkedIn, and it is where the tools to find you on LinkedIn rival what Query does.
Yeah, it does. It does, because how many interns are scouring, or how many computer spiders are looking for these specific requirements, these specific traits. And with that deck, it goes to a human, and they kind of sift through it from there. But you're exactly right. LinkedIn is where you want to start.
And Mike, to kind of pull this in from a coaching and a query perspective, when I think about what you do, what Jackie does, it's a combination, right, of being able to coach others to, seek out good information, if it were, and then also using good information from a data-driven standpoint. And Harold, I know you and I have talked about this, that everybody's going data and nobody's going back. And that it's going to be, a larger part of our lives going forward. And I think that really kind of draws us into bottom line thinking, right? Like, let's say I'm a job seeker. Bottom line is I want X job. Or let's say I'm mid-level career and I want to advance. Bottom line, I want to go to X. How do you stay, and Harold, I'd love to have your thoughts on this. How do you stay committed to the bottom line when there's so many other things that happen? How do you drive to that?
And as my dog wants to contribute to the conversation as well, that's Ralph. That's a good question. And I'm happy that they ended the book with bottom line thinking, because again, when you're comparing bowling to work, the bowling piece, in 3 minutes, but from the work perspective, you don't. That's something you have to constantly work toward. So I have some thoughts. I don't want to go too far on a limb yet. I want to hear what these other two guys say before I go too much further. Mike?
What I was going to say is coaching is about helping people create an aspiration, create a flow to get there, a plan, but also to iterate. And, that where I think people, I've been doing a lot of dialogue recently about coaching as we're trying to get you away from binary decisions. We're trying to get you into the gray area. In other words, some people say, well, I must do this to get this. Okay, great. How important is that end aspiration? Well, it's really important. I want to become a leader, or I want to be, I want to create this wonderful product. That's great. But as you learn more, as you go through your bottom line thinking, do you iterate? Do you accept change, and do you plug change into this? Do you possibly change your end aspiration? Could be. You may be changing the path to get there.
Mike is speaking my language because I believe in hypothesis-driven testing. And when you're 10 years old, you're like, I want to be a firefighter. And you should go test that hypothesis by shadowing a firefighter. So I just love, again, going back to not getting too attached, in my mind, to the bottom line, is test that bottom line. And I really like this coaching framework called GROW, where it's like, what is the goal? So I'd say the bottom line. What's the reality today? What are some obstacles in your way? What are some options that you can pursue? And then what is the way forward that you're going to choose? And as a coach, if I were to pick one of those, I just really want to expand their options, right? Help them see things, the path, see that there are multiple paths to that bottom line.
And so I'm happy you guys said that, because from my perspective, not a coach, but someone who has pursued occupation opportunities, those kinds of things, it's usually a direct line. You pull the arrow from the bow and you go after it. And so the softness, the strategy is get it, not let's discuss it. So that's where I was finding myself going at the original answer. And I thought, wait a minute. The weeks that we've done this, I've always enjoyed Mike's approach, his feedback. And I thought, let's be smart about this and hear it from a pro first, and then I'll explain why I didn't answer it. So that's
I'm just a pro in one topic area, and we've got 5 of us.
Enjoy it, celebrate. Yes,
I'm honored, but and I'd love to hear Jackie's response. But your comment about pulling the bow back and shooting the arrow.
Yeah,
you adjusted the bow based on the wind, based
True.
on the distance to the target,
True.
based on the bow strength of the bow. All of the components around this, you factored in, adjusted, you iterated where you aimed.
Thank you for that. That feels good.
Beautiful. That was profound.
Yeah.
Not bad for a Thursday night. I'm good at that. I don't have to say anything the rest of the call. This is great.
Harold, when I see like there's one way, I think of tunnel vision. And so like you might miss that there's a hatch out of here if you don't look up. And
Right.
so the one way is something that I always push back against, but I also like love the idea of having a North Star, right? And like doing whatever you can to get there.
No, agreed.
I think I probably set on the tunnel vision side of, get there, right? Whereas, let's say my spouse probably sets on more of the other side of, be a hypothesis-driven thinker, not making binary decisions. I think when it comes to career space, so many people have really had to be, this is where I'm going to go. And that it's really not until you reach certain levels or certain achievements that I think and this may not be true, this can be all fact and not feeling, but you feel like you can't look up until certain things are done or available to you. And Mike, I don't know if any of your clients have ever kind of shared a similar frame in their thoughts.
10 times a week. I mean, it's common that we, part of why I think people go through coaching, and Jackie, I'd love your thoughts on this, is that they're realizing that old method didn't work. There's a great line in coaching: things work till they don't work. And, once you hit that point of, call it diminished returns, or that my method no longer is effective, now you got to go build a new one. The people that I find interesting are the ones that go, okay, this is working, but I wouldn't mind another tool. To go back to Harold's idea of, targeting with the bow and arrow is, what, I can hit it now, but what happens if I step back 5 feet? How do I shift?
You're making me think of golfing, right? There are different putters,
different golf clubs.
Just one arrow. You can try different tools.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Do you think the option, and Jackie, this would probably, really resonate as far as in your wheelhouse, as far as educating others. And Harold, when we zoom out and think about, you and I have really had deep conversations about DE&I and diverse candidate experiences, diverse job seekers, how how to have, opportunities more broadly for a variety of people. I wonder how much of this is socialized in or out of various cultures, right? If I go into an opportunity and I feel like I have to make X happen because there's nobody else in my life that has done X, or I don't see where this different sized arrow or different golf club could be a possibility. I only know this one definitely over here will lead to maybe something. I could really be connected, to that binary choice without knowing I've got other options.
No, I appreciate the scenario there. So before the decision is made of this is the position for me, before I'm hired, okay, that's when it's scramble time, right? Okay, I'll put my bow down, I'll get the golf clubs, we'll try to make a little bit more finesse decision. But once that decision is made, then it's time to engage. You prepare, you do what you need to do to demonstrate this is why you picked me and this is what I do, right? And that's when the performance occurs. That's when the execution happens. So from a DE&I perspective, regardless of who you are, if you're hired, it's time to demonstrate why they hired you. And while there may be extra explanation or additional effort to ensure that others who may not have been a part of that decision appreciate the value you offer, that's not your role. Your role is to execute. If there's a problem with someone not getting it, that's what senior leadership is for. And of course, I guess, depending on where you are on the food chart, if this is an opportunity for an executive, let's say for execution versus strategy, those are two different kinds of conversations, and the expectations are different. If it's just a manager level, not just, but if it is a manager level, there are other discussions and group meetings that you probably have to have so everyone knows what time it is. But to your point, you're usually prepared. Once you've been hired, you're ready to go.
I'll play into that a little bit. I feel like Jackie, and I'd love your thoughts on this too. But there's a component before you get in that room, before you sign the offer letter, a component of discovery. And we tend to dismiss this. In other words, what's your decision? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And and that's something I would argue that's cultural. I would argue that, and some cultures are more adamant than others. And what's interesting is if people can, in particular on the DE&I perspective and through that lens, if you're able to spend time doing discovery, Jackie raised it earlier, go talk to somebody. Sending your deck out to your high school friends is a discovery exercise. What will these people see that you don't see? And it's every time you said it, by the way, the jaw clenched. It's twice now. But I understand why, because it's a risk. But the funny thing is, I'll bet you come back with 3 ideas that you never thought of because their perspective is so different from yours. And that idea of discovery before you start plowing into the interviews and this and that gives you a deeper perspective, gives you, wow, I didn't realize that because I took a trip when I was between my high school to college and I spent 3 months going here, I happen to have a different perspective than most people. We don't realize that the sum total of our lives makes us richer than we even give ourselves credit for. That's where discovery comes from. That to me is the first part of this journey.
It's so beautiful. You made me think of an exercise that we did in grad school called the reciprocity ring, where we asked participants to write down some asks that they have for the group, maybe something they need for their personal or professional life. And then they were posted, and then everybody responded with their give. Yep. And then the reflection afterwards from the professor was, what was easier, making the ask or making the give? And everybody was so energized by giving. They wanted to book time and give and give and give. And it was much scarier to ask. And so let's just remember, it's scary to ask as I'm feeling still today in my jaw, in my shoulders, in my neck, worried about what's happening in WhatsApp and who's judging me. And just have faith that actually people really are energized by giving. And Cynthia, I know that doesn't answer the cultural differences question. Your cultural differences question made me think about leadership, because a good leader or manager in managing a diverse team has to create a space that is safe and trusting for people to take risks and for mistakes to be okay. I have a friend that taught design thinking in India to engineers, and these were very like teach to the test, and risk taking was like not incentivized or encouraged. And so it was work to try to renorm and make people know that it was okay to propose an idea and have it not be accepted. That's really scary. So I think it's a little bit about leadership and culture.
Love that.
Very well said.
It's good.
Very well said. Harold Strong, any thoughts as we close out? Any call to action that sticks out from everything we've discussed?
No, I'm a changed individual tonight after having these pretty deep conversations. Using your network, even distant network, to bounce ideas off is a great idea. Being prepared to be open, honest, and trusting to your team as you come up with ideas that you want to pursue professionally, personally, spiritually, is a solid idea, and you grow as a result of that. So of the nights we've met, I think this is probably one of the best ones for me.
Agreed. Well said. Sophia, anything that you would like to share, or any takeaways, any call to action from your perspective, as a social media and communications intern, anything as it relates to how successful people think, or any of the topics that we dove into?
Well, I have to agree with Harold that tonight has really been one of the best nights for me, and just like learning from all of the conversation. And I just want to add on to a little bit about what Jackie was talking about, and like reaching out, especially now I am faced with the challenge of networking and finding my network, because really all I have are like my peers, which are great, don't get me wrong, but it's not the networking that I really need for my professional development. So making that step, reaching out to new people on LinkedIn has been, a challenge, but you're right. People do want to help, and it's great to get that response from different people who I admire what they do and learning about what they do. So just to tie it all back together, I think that all of these concepts obviously can be applied to many different types of industries, and whether you're going into business or media, or like myself, sports media, like these concepts can really be broadly applied to many different things. So I want to thank you guys tonight for just encouraging me to step out of my comfort zone as well.
Sophia, I just wanted to say one thing, and I know you're trying to close us up, Cynthia, but Sophia, you never know where advice and expertise is going to come from. So I had a friend that wanted to work in baseball, given your sports media. And so he had a platform, which was, he was president of William and Mary. So he was going to be able to give a speech at graduation. So he just mentioned, by the way, if anyone's in baseball, I'm looking for a job. And it was kind of a laugh line. And he ended up getting some low-level job for the Baltimore Orioles. He is now the interim general manager for the Phillies. So he climbed his way up. So pretty exciting. Put yourself out there. You never know where help is going to come.
Thank you. That's true.
I love it. I think that's probably the best way to close out. You never know where help is going to come. In the conversations that we've had over these past several weeks, you never know where the ideas are going to come from. Like when we all kind of got together and had this idea of let's read books and talk to each other, I don't think we realized kind of how renewed we'd feel in learning from each other and having other perspectives, and having, other individuals like Jackie and, different professionals join in and share their perspectives. I'd like to think we've created an inclusive space where even if you haven't read the book, you can still really be, you can still really participate and really share your perspective. And so, Jackie, thank you so much for joining us. That's going to wrap us on how successful people think. You can replay and rewatch this as many times as you would like. Please feel free to comment. You're more than welcome to connect with any of us on LinkedIn. We're happy to share thoughts, feedback, get on calendars and chat through perspectives and ideas. Next week, we're obviously going to be off because it's a holiday. So however you're holiday celebrating, we wish you all the best. We have an author interview that's going to be available for you to watch and learn from. And then we will be back in December to talk about 100-Year Life. So very excited to kick that off with some cool content and panelists, and the traditional Thursday Night Hustle crew will still be here. We might just add some new instruments into the orchestra to see what we get. So I'm Cynthia Abbott. Thank you so much for joining me and for joining the panel. We really enjoyed your comments, your thoughts, your feedback. Jackie, thank you so much for dialing in. I really appreciate it. Harold, Mike, Sophia, have a fantastic holiday. Everyone wishing you well, and we will see you live in December. Take care.